Mazda アイコニック SP です。いかがですか？操る楽しさにあふれたコンパクトスポーツカーコンセプトです。
Mazda just created a full department with 36 dedicated engineers and gave them one clear mission: bring back an engine that the entire automotive industry killed off 13 years ago. Not as a concept car collecting dust in a museum, as real hardware with actual production intent, and they might actually pull it off. So why would Mazda bet billions on a dead engine when everyone else is racing to go electric? The rotary engine was supposed to be dead, not just forgotten, but completely rejected by the entire automotive world as a failed experiment from the past. For more than a decade, it stayed that way. No major car maker even talked about it. Everyone had moved on to turbocharged 4-cylinders, efficient diesels, hybrids, and then electric vehicles. The future didn't have room for the rotary anymore. Then, in February 2024, Mazda made an announcement that shocked people who actually paid attention. The company created something called the RE Development Group, not a small research team working quietly in the background, a full department with its own resources, its own budget, and official departmental status. 36 engineers with one job: develop a modern rotary engine that could actually work in today's world. When a car company sets up an entire department for a technology that everyone else abandoned, it's not a marketing stunt. It's a clear signal that they believe something is possible that the rest of the industry thinks is impossible. But the rotary wasn't always a dead engine. It was once considered revolutionary. The Wankel rotary engine arrived in the 1960s with radical promise: fewer moving parts than a piston engine, lightweight design, and the ability to rev extremely high. It was compact and elegant, and theoretically superior to conventional engines in almost every way. Instead of pistons moving up and down, the rotary used a triangular rotor that spun inside an oval chamber. The design was elegant in its simplicity. Less mechanical complexity meant potentially more reliability. Lighter weight meant better performance. High RPM capability meant more power from smaller displacement. Mazda fell in love with this design. They became the only major car maker to mass-produce rotary-powered cars, starting with the Cosmo in 1967. The legendary RX-7 became iconic, renowned for its balance and responsiveness. It was a lightweight, nimble sports car that could compete with much more expensive European competitors. Through generations, Mazda built an entire identity around the rotary. Car enthusiasts loved these machines because they had unique character and the feeling of driving something genuinely different. But the rotary had problems that no amount of engineering passion could completely solve. Fuel economy was disastrous compared to conventional engines. The shape of the combustion chamber and the way the air-fuel mixture moved inside meant the rotary naturally burned far more fuel than a piston engine of similar displacement. You couldn't engineer that away. It was fundamental to how the design worked. Then the oil crisis of the 1970s hit hard, and suddenly fuel-hungry engines became a massive liability. Gas became expensive and hard to find. Nobody wanted an engine that drank fuel like the rotary did. Enthusiasts didn't care about efficiency. The broader market did, and the broader market was where the sales volume was. Emissions were an even bigger problem. Rotary engines struggled to burn fuel cleanly, producing high levels of hydrocarbons and other pollutants that made environmental regulators very uncomfortable. As emissions laws became stricter around the world in the 1980s and 1990s, the rotary fell further behind. The gap between what the rotary could achieve and what regulators required widened every year. Mazda kept trying. They refined the design through multiple generations. They fought against the regulations, invested in emissions control technology, and believed they could make it work. Engineers at Mazda weren't ready to give up on something so fundamentally different and special, but the math was against them. By the time the RX-8 launched in 2003, it was fighting a losing battle against new diesel engines that were becoming cleaner and more efficient. By 2012, even Mazda had to admit defeat. The RX-8 was discontinued. The rotary engine was officially dead. For more than a decade after that, the rotary didn't exist. Not in any production car, not in any real-world application. Just memories and nostalgia and YouTube videos of old Mazda sports cars screaming at 9,000 revolutions per minute. Just the legend of what these cars meant to people who drove them. The world moved on. Everyone accepted that internal combustion engines with character had no place in a future focused on efficiency and emissions. The rotary was gone for good. It belonged in the past. It was a failed experiment in automotive history, or so everyone thought. What most people missed was that Mazda had actually already brought the rotary back before they announced the RE development group. In 2023, Mazda launched the MX-30 e-Skyactiv REV, a plug-in hybrid SUV. It looked like a practical, sensible family vehicle on the surface, but buried inside was a tiny single-rotor rotary engine, just 830 cubic centimeters of displacement. This was Mazda's quiet proof that the technology could work in the real world. The twist was what the rotary engine actually did. It didn't power the wheels directly. Instead, it ran at a steady, constant speed to generate electricity. It charged the battery, and the battery powered the electric motor that actually moved the car. The rotary engine worked like a portable generator, not a performance engine screaming at high RPM. This was a completely different role than the RX-7 or RX-8. Instead of delivering wild horsepower, the rotary ran efficiently at a steady speed. And as it turned out, rotary engines are actually very good at that job. They're compact, smooth, and when you're not asking them for extreme performance, they can be reasonably efficient. The MX-30 wasn't a massive sales success. It remained a niche product in a niche segment, but it proved something critical. Mazda could build a modern rotary engine that met emission standards. They could use it in a real car. It actually worked. That success laid the foundation for everything that came next. In 2023, Mazda introduced the iconic SP concept at the Japan Mobility Show. And this is when the story became genuinely interesting for the industry. This was not another practical hybrid SUV. This was a two-seat sports car with aggressive styling, a low-slung stance, and a powertrain that immediately grabbed the attention of car enthusiasts. Under the hood was a two-rotor rotary engine paired with an electric motor in a hybrid configuration. Mazda claimed the iconic SP could produce around 370 horsepower, while still keeping emissions relatively low and being able to run on carbon-neutral synthetic fuel. The design itself was striking. Sharp lines, purposeful stance, the overall look of a car made for people who actually love driving, not a practical appliance, a machine with character and intent. But concept cars are easy. Every major automaker shows flashy concepts that never make it to production. What made the iconic SP different was how Mazda talked about it. They didn't use the language of concept cars. They didn't say, "This represents our vision," or "This explores what might be possible." They said they were considering production. That is a very different message, and it signaled something important. This wasn't just a design exercise. This was a real possibility. Then, in 2025, Mazda introduced another concept called the Vision RX Coupe, and this time the company pushed even harder. The Vision RX was designed to run on fuel derived from microalgae, a renewable source that absorbs carbon dioxide as it grows. The message was explicit. Mazda wanted to position the rotary not as a dirty, fuel-guzzling relic from the past, but as part of a sustainable future. According to reports close to the development team, the engineering for the next-generation rotary powertrain is almost technically complete. That means most of the hard work is already done. What remains is the business case, the manufacturing plan, and the final decision on whether Mazda will actually build it. So how does Mazda solve the problems that killed the rotary in the first place? First, the hybrid setup is crucial. By allowing the rotary to operate in its most efficient range instead of constantly speeding up and slowing down with the car, Mazda solves many of the old fuel consumption problems. When a rotary engine was the main power source, it had to constantly accelerate and decelerate with traffic, climbing uphill, speeding on highways. That variable operation made it inefficient. The engine ran outside its optimal range. It burned more fuel. In the hybrid configuration, the rotary runs at constant speed, while the electric motor handles acceleration and deceleration. When the engine operates in its optimal range without variable demands, efficiency improves dramatically. It's like the difference between walking at a constant pace versus constantly stopping and starting. Second, Mazda is engineering the rotary to run on carbon-neutral synthetic fuel. If that fuel is synthesized from carbon in the atmosphere or produced from renewable sources like microalgae, the emissions picture changes. This is a gamble on future fuel technology, but not unreasonable. Several car makers, including Porsche, are already betting on synthetic fuels for similar reasons. Third, emissions control technology has advanced significantly since 2012. Modern catalytic converters, particulate filters, and combustion management systems are far more advanced than what existed when the RX-8 was discontinued. Mazda claims its new rotary designs can meet Euro 7 and upcoming United States emission standards. This would have been almost impossible a decade ago. The two-rotor setup in the iconic SP also matters significantly. Two rotors provide more displacement and more power, while keeping the compact size and smooth operation that rotary engines are known for. When paired with an electric motor in a hybrid system, the configuration is elegant. The electric motor delivers instant torque and smooth acceleration for daily driving. The rotary engine delivers high revving power when the driver wants performance. On paper, this is a combination that takes genuine advantage of the strengths of both technologies. The development team has also improved the apex seal design, one of the historic weak points of rotary engines. Apex seals are the components that help maintain compression inside the combustion chambers. They've always been known for wearing out and failing, forcing expensive engine rebuilds. Better materials developed in recent years, and better coatings could significantly extend engine life, solving one of the old criticisms about rotary reliability. But here's the reality: this is still an enormous gamble. Developing a new engine from scratch is expensive. Facilities must be built, testing takes years, and millions of miles must be driven to ensure reliability. Developing an engine for only a niche product is even more expensive because you can't amortize costs across millions of units sold annually. Mazda is not Toyota or Volkswagen. They don't have unlimited resources. They can't just decide to spend $1 billion on a project that might only sell a few thousand cars per year. Every dollar spent on rotary development is a dollar not being spent on electric vehicle platforms, new conventional engines, or expanding the hybrid lineup. Those are the products that actually pay the bills right now. Those are where the market volume is. Mazda has significant business pressure to go all in on electric vehicles like everyone else. Every dollar spent on rotary development is a dollar not being spent on EV platforms or hybrid expansion. Those are the products that actually pay the bills. A rotary sports car might sell 10,000 units per year globally if successful. That's not enough to move the needle for a company Mazda's size. There's also the market question. Who exactly is going to buy a rotary-powered sports car in 2026 or 2027? Enthusiasts will definitely line up. The dedicated car lovers who care about driving, feel, and engine character will buy these cars. But that group is small. The broader automotive market has moved decisively toward SUVs, crossovers, and increasingly electric vehicles. A two-seat sports car is still a tough product to sell in that environment. Sports cars as a category are struggling. Porsche is one of the few manufacturers still thriving with performance cars. Most other sports car segments have shrunk or disappeared entirely. Buying a sports car is an emotional decision, not a rational one. You buy it because you want to drive something special, not because it's practical or efficient. Mazda executives have admitted this openly in recent interviews. They've said that justifying the investment is very difficult. The business case is not obvious. The math doesn't work if you're only looking at profit and loss projections. But they've also said something else, something that reveals how they're thinking about this decision. Some things are worth doing even if they don't make immediate financial sense. The rotary engine is part of Mazda's identity. It's what makes them different from every other automaker. In a landscape where most cars are becoming more similar, maybe that difference still has value. Maybe there's a business case for being the one brand that offers passion and character. But there's also significant risk. Synthetic fuels might not scale up or might remain expensive enough that they never become mainstream. If that happens, the rotary's environmental argument falls apart. Mazda is left with a niche engine that is very hard to justify under increasingly strict emissions regulations. You can't sell something that violates emission standards, no matter how much enthusiasts love it. What Mazda is doing signals something important about the automotive industry right now. The mainstream narrative says electrification is inevitable, and there's only one path forward. Every car company is supposed to race toward battery electric vehicles, or they'll be left behind. That's the accepted story. Mazda is essentially saying, we believe that too, but we're also going to explore other options. We're going to try to keep the internal combustion engine alive in a form that can coexist with stricter environmental standards. We're betting that not everyone wants to drive a silent, efficient, emotionless appliance. Some people want engagement, personality, and a feeling of connection with the machine. Other car makers are watching. Porsche is already investing in synthetic fuels. There's a growing recognition that the automotive future might not be as monolithic as everyone assumed. Mazda hasn't committed to production yet. The iconic SP and Vision RX coupe are still concepts, but the engineering being almost complete suggests they are getting very close. The next few years will show whether this gamble pays off. Either way, Mazda is betting that passion and heritage can still carve out a space in a rapidly changing industry. That is a bet worth watching.